Big M, good Monday for me. It wasn't actually even that bad. Like half my lineups, not half even, maybe a little less, were cashing, but not most of the big ones. It was just kind of ugly, and I didn't play a ton of lineups, and it would have been a good night not to be stacking because nobody really went off the way you wanted them to. So, Sheets, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into the slate.
Well, as you guys know from having been to both the early slate preview and the live before lock, I X'd out the Colorado-San Diego game. And I said that, whether it was going to rain out or not, I was going to X it out. So I figured I would X it out and just hope the game rained out. And so the game I didn't say it looked like it was going to rain out, but like it just wasn't starting. So I'm like, okay, that one's fine. That one's done. And then like none of my teams just ended up really doing anything. And so then when San Diego and Colorado actually played, I'm like, all right, thank God. You know what I mean? Now let's say that San Diego and Colorado are just going to go off as chalk and it's not going to matter to me. And they actually busted. So it was that bad of a performance by my lineups that I couldn't even overcome, a San Diego, Colorado just not getting there. So, not the best, but we're ready to get on with a just enormous slate with a zillion options.
Yeah, and I just want to throw out yesterday, I'm not sure if this is right. I have to double check it, but I think every single game hit the under yesterday except for one push.
Wait, excuse me. I would like to flex for one thing I did yesterday. Yeah. For those of you that were here, you remember the one wager, Angels money line plus the 2-1 against the Braves.
Oh, right? Beautiful.
Remember?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and as it turns out, that was fraudulent because that was predicated on the fact that I was going to be having Griffin Canning, who ended up not even pitching. So, nonetheless, we're ready to move on. I suppose.
We're ready to roll. Okay. All right, let's get into it. Let's pull your screen up. We'll go game by game because this is going to be a tough one. There's a lot of options.
I got all day. We can go ahead and take as much time as you need.
Okay. All right. So Milwaukee, Washington. Why don't you jump in on this one, Sheets, to start us off here?
All right. So I have I'd like to give kind of a preview of what I'm liking here. There's like a billion pitchers you can choose from, and I kind of reduced it to, 10. Right? And I have like three kind of tiers of pitchers, and I'm getting Peralta as kind of my second tier of pitchers to play. So I have him, but as we talk about quite a bit, Washington can be very, very stingy. And I guess that's why he's not one of the top ones. I guess that's why he's second tier. As far as the hitting goes, I do have Milwaukee as one of and again, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got maybe 7 or 8 stacks that I like here, and I do have Milwaukee as one of them. So that's where I'm at. So Milwaukee and a little bit of Peralta.
Yeah, I think that Josiah Gray is the best play in this game. I definitely have interest in him. You're going to see that there's a lot of lineups that are pivots off of cores that you're going to want to pay up for. And I have Josiah Gray as a really good option and would be my favorite part of this game. As I mentioned, Milwaukee, 8th highest strikeout rate against righties in baseball. Didn't work out yesterday with Cole Irvin, although he only gave up, 2 runs in 5 2/3.
Yeah, Irving pitched pretty well before that last inning. Whatever.
Yeah, he just didn't have the strikeouts.
Right.
Josiah Gray does have the strikeout upside. So I actually think that he's a very interesting guy to consider in this lower tier. And Freddie Peralta, like you mentioned, is one name near the, it's gonna pop up.
Sheetbot said True DFS tennis projections have been updated. They should be available on SaberSim in a few minutes.
But Peralta is an option, but I just think I like the other spend ups a little bit better. But I have them on my list for now. We'll go through it. There's going to be a lot of guys.
Well, let's again. It's 14 games, but when we get through all 14, I think that everybody will appreciate the Josiah Gray pick a little bit more because we're going to get to starting with this next game actually, but we're going to get to a handful of cheap pitchers that are going to be pretty chalky. And when you run your lineups and you start, getting tied into these like chalky 7K and below pitchers, you're gonna appreciate maybe a play like Josiah Gray more than you might when you're just looking at this first game.
Yeah.
Okay. because he's going to be a very, very, listen, if he gets there, right, he's going to be a very strong pivot. Number one, off Milwaukee, who might get some ownership, but number two, off of a couple of 6K pitchers who are really going to take some money.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Starting with, and that's transition. So Detroit, Pittsburgh, I have next, and one of the aforementioned possible chalk cheapos will be Oviedo from Pittsburgh. He's up against Detroit, and he's coming on here. He's got some numbers. He's got some results too recently, so he's going to be, I think, for the lineups that play this way. Let's put it that way. For the lineups that do pay down, I think he's going to be one of. There are a couple we'll get to, but he's going to be one of those chalky pitchers. He does look good, okay, but
I don't know how chalky he'll really end up being, to be honest, though. Right?
Well, chalky in our 14-game slate, I'm talking about maybe 10%. 10.
Oh yeah. I'm not worried about that. Yeah.
But nonetheless, I do think he's a good play here. And then like kind of sneaky again, like maybe this is overthinking the pivots and overthinking what ownership you need to fade here, but I don't find Matt Manning a particularly poor play either. And if you're going to play down here, Pittsburgh's not exactly we are family either. And Manning does have some decent talent. So I do like both the pitching in this game a little bit. And yet I do also have Pittsburgh as one of the eight or so stacks that I like. So it's Pittsburgh, Oviedo, and maybe some Manning.
Yep, that's my notes is Oviedo. I actually do like. I'm not worried about 10% ownership on any pitcher, pretty much ever. But even if he were a little higher, I have no problem with Oviedo at all. I think there's upside. I think that he's got good stuff. It's the Tigers, which we like. And as you mentioned, I think that Manning shouldn't be written off either. It's probably not going to make it for me because I would actually rather play Josiah Gray probably than Manning. But I think they're both in consideration. And like you said, I think specifically, like you could say a full 5-man, but I just have Pittsburgh as just the ultimate value. I mean, these guys are, you won't find 9 cheaper guys in the lineup very often. You've got everybody from 4 on is going to be 2.9K or below probably. And your highest price player in your lineup is Brian Reynolds, who seems to be too cheap, even though he's struggled lately at a 4.3 price tag. I guess he struggled lately until he got hot. He struggled for the middle of the year. But so I'm in on the Pittsburgh with Pittsburgh value, and Oviedo is my favorite pieces, but I do think Manning is in consideration too, especially if you're playing the 150 max type of thing.
One announcement before we press on, I'm going to be doing a live sweat tonight. It's starting at about 11 o'clock tonight. It's going to be a pretty good freaking slate to sweat down the stretch, and hopefully we're going to be live with something to kind of sweat. So everybody join us at 11. Bobby might be able to come. If so, maybe a little bit later or whatever. But that's always one of the fun things that I like to do.
Yeah.
So moving on, I guess I'll start with Tampa and the Yankees. I'm not getting to Zach Eflin at 10-3 today. And now with respect to Carlos Rodon, I've been very let me say how vocal I can be. I've been pretty vocal about not playing him. Now, what I've been saying, though, is that, this is not what they were hoping for when he first came up. But, yeah, it's possible that he gets his act together and gets going. But I was always saying that I'd rather just kind of wait and risk, not being early. And I would want to wait to see at least one start that gives me hope. And I have to say that that his last game gives you a little bit of hope. I mean, it's not – it's not the Rodon they really expected. I mean, he did only have 4 strikeouts. He did also 3 walks and 5 whatever. But it's definitely improving. He's over 90 pitches for the first time. He did have a fantasy point production, which at least doesn't get you last place in tournaments, right? And I think it's fair to say that he's kind of coming into his own. He does show up projection-wise as being a decent play. I just have this feeling that he's going to be more owned than I would like him to be. This is the type of play that I would really just want to play at 3% or something like that. And I just don't think it's going to work out that way. But I definitely think that in general, this is the type of I'll be early enough having at least seen one good game out of him, And Tampa, as you've been on from the beginning of the season, this team can win like 110 games. It won't matter. You know what I mean?
Not anymore.
Whatever, but you can still attack this team. You know what I mean? Like this team will give up some strikeouts. So I think Rodon is definitely in play today at 9K. As far as the hitting goes, I'm just not getting to either hitting team here. So for me, I think I can finally get on board with a little bit of Rodon.
Yeah, in general, I don't like using lefties as very much against Tampa Bay. I've always been only on the righty side of things against Tampa Bay. They don't strike out against lefties. They do strike out against righties, and they hit the ball like crazy against lefties. So I'm a little lower on Rodon, but I actually think that he'll be like, we'll probably say like 9K was too cheap for him. I'm fine. Like, it's fine. I mean, I just think you could find other ways to spend your money personally. And I think Zach Eflin is probably like a better, higher upside option, but I am not going to touch that price. So I'm basically just off this game in general. And that's pretty much it. I don't think I have anything really interesting in this game at all.
Now, just to put it in perspective, I have Rodon 6th, 7th, like 8th on my pitcher. So it's not like he's the guy I'm just stopping to get in.
Like SaberSim has him basically with the same score as Josiah Gray, just FYI.
Ooh, yeah, I'm not surprised.
So,
and that's a good point. You know what I mean? Like the projections, like right down the list, are going to look pretty flat. So there's really no need to, to spend. First of all, to get that to play that too much chalk, and also, like you said, we're done for 9K as opposed to Gray. What is he, 6K or something like that? Maybe you're right. Maybe Gray is a better play.
Just throwing it out. I think Gray has got a lot of risk always, but a lot of upside as well. All right.
So welcome back. So Baltimore against Toronto. Welcome back to the once and future leader of the free world, Hyung-Jung Ryu, at 7K coming off the IL. Let's see what we got here. He had a minor league rehab start, and he's been doing bullpen, whatever. I don't know what his restrictions are. I mean, I don't know. 7,100, 7K. Have I made worse plays? Probably. I don't know. So he is in my list. Bradish, I don't really have. And as far as Baltimore or Toronto, as far as hitting, I don't have either of the hitting. Is Ryu too speculative here? You like anything else in this game?
I think that he's an in between. Like, I don't really like him that much. I mean, it's not like we would be going, oh, we need to play him against Baltimore in the first place. Okay. So I don't want to overthink it as if like he's some sort of, best pitcher in baseball type of guy or something. For what it's worth, Baltimore is basically like a little bit below strikeout average against lefties, and they also hit the ball well against lefties. So I'm not especially interested in anything in this game at all, to be honest. I don't mind mixing Ryu in a 150 type of build, but he's better than the guys who maybe we like at 6 in the 6Ks, but coming off of just because he had one decent rehab start after Tommy John surgery, like I don't know, it just feels like a weird thing to do to play him.
All right, I'll start with Angels against the Braves. So first things first, maybe when you get to my age, you forget things, and then you like, oh, who's that guy? Who's that guy? And then like later on, just in the middle of a sentence, like it just kind of hits you. And sometimes something external just like triggers the finishing of a sentence that you started like a half an hour ago. So yesterday when we were talking about Charlie Morton against the Angels, I was thinking, first of all, I didn't really like to play too much. I thought it was kind of fishy. And then I said it kind of depended on one of the, who's going to be playing for the Angels, because all these guys came over. And you're like, who are you even concerned about? I don't even know who came over. I'm like, this guy looks CJ Crone, and you're like, yeah, well, what's the big deal with CJ Crone? Yeah, not much. I'm just thinking I'm missing somebody or whatever. And then like as I'm walking around, I see out of the corner of my eye, Kwiatek hit a home run. I'm like, that's the guy. That's the guy that I forgot about. So nonetheless, Spencer Strider at 12,500. As usual, it's a tough price to pay. But he's got you know, I want to say like a 10-digit strikeout floor. You know what I mean? Like he's going to probably put up a whole bunch of points. And the question is do you want to pay up for hitting, or do you want to pay up for pitching? If you want to pay up for hitting, you're probably not going to be able to play Strider. My typical way to play is to not pay up for guys like this, to just kind of pay down and just go for the hitting. And that's usually, listen, it depends on the slate, obviously, but you usually you do that as well sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like yesterday, I remember I saw your big buying yesterday. And you had the right idea. Atlanta just chose not to score yesterday.
Right.
That was just the way it goes. But nonetheless, I mean, Atlanta, you know, they're gonna look good every day. You know, they don't look like particularly good value today. I mean, they don't really ever, but specifically today. So I don't know if that's going to be my spend up. Got other teams I want to talk about. So I'm not actually getting Atlanta as one of my top 8 stacks as far as who I'm actually going to play. But I will put Strider into my pool and see what kind of lineups I can get from him. So he's currently one of the top 3 pitchers on the slate for me. And it's just a matter of construction of whether it actually gets to him. And I'm not getting to Sandoval at 7,100, but maybe you could talk me into that. So for me, just to summarize again, I think Atlanta's, I'm just going to not be on them today when the lineups actually get built. And Strider, I probably will be on with kind of the cheaper stack.
Yeah, look, Strider is a really good pitcher. 12-5, you kind of need a huge result or everyone else to fail, and it's too many games for everybody else to fail. So I probably end up staying away. I really don't think like even 30 is going to kill you with him. And you know, obviously, as great as he is, it's not like I'll use my Andrew Abbott thing. It's just to give people a frame of reference. Spencer Strider averages 2 more fantasy points per game than Andrew Abbott does. This is not. We talk a lot about these pitching things, and people would say, "Oh, but he's got a higher upside." Well, actually, not. I think Abbott actually has the higher games this year than him. They're pretty close. But I just think it's funny how we think about it sometimes, where we think. I mean, even his projections are fair. But you're still talking about probably around 30 if he has a good game, and probably in the mid 20s if he doesn't, or low 20s because his strikeout rate is so high. So I'm. Basically, I have him on my list. He's the top spend up and all that. I just would rather try to find another way to build, especially because he's going to be owned. If he wasn't going to be owned, and you like the cheap stacks, like you're going to end up with a lot of Pittsburgh if you play him. You're going to end up with teams like that, which is fine. But just know what you're getting into. The Braves I have as certainly a top 3 stack of the night. The best team in recent baseball history against left-handed pitching. They absolutely massacre left-handed pitching. They crush right-handed pitching too. They're the best team in baseball against righties. They're significantly the best team in baseball against lefties, and it's not particularly close. Their OPS is 70 points, 60 points higher than the second best team. It's 100 points higher than the team after that. They've hit. The only team that hit more home runs again is the Dodgers, but they've played more games against lefties. So they hit 290 as a team against lefties. This is just wild stuff. So I'm in on the Braves as always. I don't think Sandoval is an especially bad pitcher, but the Braves, when they're at home and it's hot out, it's 88 degrees. I'm just going to side with it, and I understand that people will be afraid to play them, and they're like, oh, the Braves haven't been as good lately. I just don't care about that stuff. I'm just going to bet on the team that's the best offense in baseball when people aren't going to play them. So I will make sure to have Atlanta as one of my priorities today because they are going to be somewhat forgotten about, which is bizarre to say.
Minnesota against St. Louis I have next. And Pablo Lopez, there's a handful of pitchers that on other slates would just kind of show up as just much as better options. And Lopez to me is just one of those. He's not really showing up as even in my top 8 or 9 options, just I guess because of his price on a day like today. As far as Mikolas goes, I mean, whenever you have a slate like this, I'm looking for cheap guys, but I think that between Gray, who you mentioned, Oviedo, who you mentioned, and others we'll talk about, I don't think that Mikolas is. I don't know. For right now, I don't have him in here, but you've talked me in and out of Mikolas and guys like this before, so I'll wait to hear what you have to say. Minnesota, St. Louis, neither of the hitting interest me at all. So I'm probably going to end up exiting the game out.
Yeah, so you have the strikeout pitcher, the pitcher that can't get the strikeouts, and the team that can't help but strike out a million times. So I'm definitely going to take some shots on Mikolas. The more I think about it, I actually, I couldn't sleep last night, so I woke up and I was sort of going through the slate, and I looked at Mikolas and I looked at some of these plays, and I just kept finding myself with builds in this 6,900 range, and you're going to have some concentrated chalk on a guy we're going to talk about in a minute, but Mikolas is definitely one of the guys I'll be mixing in with a Oviedo, Gray, and then we're going to talk about Heaney pretty soon.
Yeah.
In fact, no, not next. I got the wrong.
Not quite.
All right. Why don't you tell us? So just before she says it, they're somewhat crosswindy, but it looks more like it's coming in directly from right now, 9 miles an hour. Just want to throw that out there.
You mean for the Cubs?
What's that? For the Cubs.
Yeah. So I have Steele as the last of the pitchers that I'm getting to. So I mentioned like 8 or 9 pitchers. He's like 9th. So he's like the last guy I have. And Lively is not showing up for me, nor are either of the hitting teams here. So just a little bit of Steele for me and not much else.
I'm okay with, if for some reason, and it does sometimes in Chicago, if the wind changed, I would be okay with taking some shots on Chicago. Still a lot of cheap pieces in that lineup. And I think Steele is a really solid pitcher. I think, and Chicago's lineup Cincinnati's lineup is just, continued to get better. It's hard to use their overall, season numbers as a median, but they've been pretty decent against left-handed pitching. But they're at their average strikeout rate. So I don't have a problem with Steele. I would keep him in the Peralta Steele category, like guys I'm probably not going to play, but I'm definitely considering. All right. And next up, we do have the White Sox, right?
Yep. So we have Andrew Heaney, who is 6,600, and he is a very volatile option always. He has a good strikeout upside, and he can get torched pretty easily as well. And usually the idea is to play him when he's low owned and not play him when he's chalk. So for me, he seems like he's going to be chalk today, so probably want to fade him. More to the point, I'd love to play the White Sox, but I think it's just too big of a slate. I don't know if I can do it. Heaney does show up as a well-projected guy, and he also does have upside. So I'm not saying he's a bad play, but I'm just saying he's a volatile play. And if you play him, I would probably play him with lower-owned options. Schultens, no thank you. More to the point, on the other side of the game, I do like Texas as one of the 8 or so stacks that I prefer. So I do like Texas, and Heaney looks like a good play, but I would just be careful of the ownership.
Yeah, I like both Heaney and Texas. I think this is but look, we talked about some other options. You have an extremely volatile pitcher who's probably going to be the highest owned in that price range. But I also think that he has the highest upside of any of those guys. So,
well, yeah, because it's one of the reasons he's going to be the highest owned. By the way.
Yeah, people say, oh, but it's struggled or whatever. He faced Houston and the Dodgers his last 2 starts, Cleveland before that. He did have a weird blow up game against Washington. Whatever I think about and talk myself into or out of it, I know I'm going to have Heaney in some lineups tonight. Mm-hmm. That's for sure, and I know that I'm going to have some Rangers stacks. I like this is what I was meaning about, like staying away from cores and finding stacks that you like that are going to cost money. Well, the Rangers are one of them, along with the Braves and Dodgers. No surprise, the best 3 offenses in baseball. But when you get the best 3 offenses in baseball and their combined ownership is going to be as low as it is tonight, I think you kind of probably should be doing that. You have teams that are you have the Braves early on as an aggregate projection, nobody projected above 8% owned as a hitter. And you have nobody projected above for the Texas, like 5%, 6%. I'm in on these guys and these ownerships. I'll overpay. I'll do whatever I have to for the hitting and take my chances with the high risk guys like Heaney and Gray and Mikolas. It's just a weird play, but I don't know. That's the route I'm going today.
This next game, the Mets in Kansas City, I have the Mets in Kansas City on straight value rated literally 1-2 on the slate. So there's that. The other thing is that if you're going to pay down for pitching, I mean, Greinke, he has 0 strikeouts a game. You know what I mean? I think I'd rather, if I had to pick one of these guys, maybe Quintana, but I don't know. I'll let you talk me into that. But both these stacks, like Mets and Yankees, are just really, really cheap. So whether you could, these are the guys that you could play with the more expensive pitchers, and you can use them as complementaries as well. But I do have the Mets, one of the top options on the board, and Kansas City is a value piece.
Yeah. So you really are into the Mets. Yeah, this game is one of those that looks like there's pretty strong 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in. Even when Greinke gets roughed up, the one thing he doesn't do is walk people, which tends to not lead to full stack. I don't know, reaching its total peak, but you have a bad bullpen behind him, so I guess you could look at it that way. I'm fine with some Mets. I would probably, just because it's 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from right, I would probably stick to more righties than lefties, which usually is not what I would say against Greinke. But I'm definitely okay with the Mets. The one very get weird play is Quintana. I just wanted to consider it because, like I said, I'm cycling through all these 6K pitchers.
Yeah.
He's got his third start back. It's probably the wrong thing to do, but I just wanted to think about it for a second. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world to throw a little Quintana in. So, so I probably am going to. And I just don't have the Mets as interesting as a full stack, maybe. But maybe I should even reconsider that. I'll probably have a little bit of Mets exposure, but they're definitely not my favorite stack. I like the other three better, but they're you could argue that they're in the top 5.
Cleveland and Houston. You have Valdez against Gavin Williams, and this is one of those games where just the hitting of both teams is kind of just good enough to keep me off of the pitching, and the pitching is good enough to keep me off of the hitting. Valdez just 11-1. What do you want? What do you want me to do? And you'd think that Houston would be okay. I'm just not really getting to them. They're maybe on the outside looking in at the most. So I'm probably passing this game.
Yeah, Kevin Williams hasn't been as great as we'd hoped. And what's weird to me is that he didn't. I don't know what happened that last game. They just took him out really early, and I'm not really sure why or what was going on. He's a lower tier of a version of the guys on my list because I could see him having a decent game at some point, but I just think that I'm probably just off. Yeah, like you said, I guess I'm just off this game in general. I don't think Valdez is a impossible play, but I don't think there's any reason I would do it. I want to point one thing out as we go back to Strider with Atlanta, which I sort of didn't touch on before. It's probably worth noting that Atlanta is really on the verge of having nothing to play for. I know it sounds crazy this early in the year, but they're 8 games up on the next team in the National League. They're 11 games up in their division. Strider's, pitches are last time he was pitching beautifully, and they pulled him after 91, and that's going to happen sometimes in start innings. But I wouldn't expect guys to get overextended for Atlanta pitching wise too much going forward. Just wanted to throw that out there, and I thought of that because usually it's Houston we're talking about this time of the year with that situation. They're not in that situation, but they would tend to maybe throw Valdez a little bit less then. But tonight Valdez he'll be a full go, but there's no way I'm playing him. And Gavin Williams, I don't think I'm going to do it, but I'm just considering him as another one of my 6K shots.
If I'm not mistaken, again, I think I was watching that game. I don't think it was the 91. I think he gave up a home run or something. It was one of those momentum things.
It happened the same thing the game before.
Okay.
And actually 2 games before that too. So I think that there is something to it. Just that they're probably going to keep him under 100 pitches as much as they possibly.
Is that other guy still on the Braves? The lefty, Max Fried.
Yeah, he's hurt. He's hurt.
He's hurt. Okay. So they're doing this without Max Fried. Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, but he's not like I mean, the offense is the reason why they're going so. Their offense has been just
Right.
historic, like crazy good.
Okay, San Diego, Colorado, same weather report pretty much as yesterday. And as they kind of showed, they listen. They rent that stadium out for the day. They're going to play. They're going to play baseball apparently. They'll wait it out. They'll play through the rain. They'll play through the snow. They'll play.
Yeah, that was a long one yesterday.
They'll play through the sleet. They'll play it all. So I'm not. So I don't know if it's even worth considering the weather anymore over there. So it's the same sort of situation as it was. San Diego rates to be the top overall play. They're going to be high owned, and it's a question of what you want to do with them. Today, actually, I like Colorado more than I would have yesterday, actually. So that's something a little different. I have Colorado as pretty decent value, actually. So I guess I prefer Colorado to San Diego, I suppose, given everything else. But it's still, obviously, it's a Coors game, so it's going to project well, and you have to decide whether you want to eat that ownership or not.
Yeah, well said. That's true. Yeah, the San Diego run projected total at 7.3, a lot.
It is a lot, isn't it?
It's also the highest I've seen Colorado projected in a long time at 5.7. It is good hitting. You've got 10 instead of 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in like yesterday. It's 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out. 75 degrees, so still not like the crazy heat, but still warm. Yeah, I think that there are pieces of this game. If I had to prioritize pieces, if you're going to try to do that kind of thing, I think that Soto, Tatis, Machado, obviously being the best from San Diego. Maybe you could say Campusano at his price as a catching option. They'll have cheap options like Rivas. So I just don't want to do this stack thing. I do think that Colorado has a lower owned, very cheap stack. Are they going to be lower owned today? I'm trying to figure this out. They're projected to be fairly low owned, but I just feel like I thought this might be a day people came onto them, and maybe I'm wrong. So I like the game for pieces. And I like the Colorado stack. I think that's the stack that I would roll with. And by the way, if you look at Colorado's stack, you're probably going to end up with Colorado, and you could probably get in a Colorado like Pittsburgh stack with like Strider easily and another payout. So I actually think that the Colorado, if they end up getting played, will probably be in a lot of Strider lineups because of their pricing. So just keep that in mind. For what it's worth. All right, Boston and Seattle sheets. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm just not going to get to any part of this. You'd think that, again, that playing righties against Seattle is kind of a thing. Pivetta, he can bring it, man. He was really bringing the heat yesterday.
Yeah.
Bello is not as much of a strikeout guy, though, it seems. And at 8,900, I just don't think I'm getting there. Bryce Miller on the other side, just you got to cut off somewhere. So I'm just probably off of this game completely.
Yeah, I think both these guys are actually decent pitchers, and I'm probably not going to play either of them. I don't think I'm going to play any hitters against them. So I think it's a move-on game for me, which we might be hearing again pretty soon. All right, Arizona, San Fran sheets. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Zach Gallen is definitely in play. At 10.5, I have him as one of the top 5 or so, given everything else. So I do like him. I also have Alex Cobb listed as a possible one of the top 8 or 9. So I do like both of the pitchers here a little bit. And as far as hitting goes, my current sheets don't really get me to either of them, San Francisco or Arizona. You like anything here?
I think both pitchers are viable. I do think that Gallen, like if I was going to do a spend up with Strider, I probably would just go for it all and take the Strider Gallen approach. You know what I mean? Play all these 2K-ish guys in stacks. But Gallen has really regressed lately. Just, again, he's had some tough matchups in there, so I can't totally hold it against him. It's just he's not quite the guy. We aren't seeing those same games we did at the beginning of the year. But San Francisco strikes out enough where I think this is actually a reasonable idea to take a shot. I don't think playing Cobb against Arizona sounds like a good idea, but I like Cobb as a pitcher, and I think he probably has a decent enough game. I just don't think that I need to pay 8,200 for it. I think some of the guys in the 6K ranges will get me there just as easily. So I have Cobb, for example, and versus a guy we're about to talk about in Lance Lynn. I have Lance Lynn as a slightly better play, but it's really just because of matchup. If you switch those matchups around, I would be I would be all over Cobb against the A's, but I wouldn't play Lance Lynn against Arizona. And I just don't like playing guys against Arizona very much if I don't have to.
Yeah, the Dodgers are really are making some moves. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's one thing to note, by the way. There's a lot of don't build your lineups early and expect to have any idea of who's playing today. The trade deadline ends at 6 Eastern.
No, but they've already. I'm just commenting. They've made some moves.
This is a really important point that I should have led the show off with. Nothing is going to come out the way that you think it is today, and lineups will come out way later than you've ever seen.
Yeah. So they picked up a couple of guys. They picked up Joe Kelly, who they used to actually have, and they also picked up Lance Lynn, and they also picked up Armand Rosario, and they also picked up Kike. And they had Kike Hernandez earlier in the week.
Yeah.
It's a pretty. It doesn't seem very Dodgerish what they're doing, but
oh, I do. I think it is. They get platoon players to play the thing. None of these guys are like staples or anything.
Yeah, no, that's true. So watch the lineup or whatever it is. But all else being equal, and if you watch your lineups, you have both parts of the Dodgers as kind of elite options today, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you have Lance Lynn projected as one of the top 3 on the board. He's going to be, I imagine, pretty popular as well. Home against Oakland and home, whatever. He don't even know what home is, but against Oakland at 7,900, and he's right now looking to be really, really popular. We'll talk about that later, I guess. And the Dodgers I have is one of the top options here. You got to watch who's playing and all that stuff. But if you get, the guys that you want to get, between Betts and Freeman and Taylor, what's Taylor 3K? He's cheap enough. And then Rosario, I'll play him if he's in the lineup. You know what I mean? Just got to see who's playing, I suppose. But I think that the Dodgers are one of the top options. So Dodgers, Lynn, and yeah.
Yeah, this is the hardest game to analyze because Vegas has not put out a run line yet. Will Smith, Mookie Betts, and who's the other one? I believe Muncy are all questionable. They're all day-to-day. Oh, no, JD Martinez.
Right.
And without JD there, the lineup definitely suffers a little bit with your fixed filling in guys like Rosario and Taylor instead. But I like those guys as the pricing becomes easier, so then it becomes a little bit easier to get them in. So it's just a matter of what you think of it. I do like the Dodgers against Waldichuk and the A's bullpen, and I just don't know who's playing yet. And my guess is this could be a day where some of these lineups come out late or after lock, or you see some scratches because teams are still making moves, and sometimes things don't get to don't get out there till later, and then they want to have time to figure out their lineups or whatever. I also want to add that the Dodgers, Kike Hernandez, Chris Taylor, and Ahmed Rosario are all extremely unlikely to finish the game, as is Austin Barnes if he starts this game, which he's
okay.
Just because at least 2 of them are going to get pinch hit for every game, basically. You're not going to throw a bunch of lefties at this team and keep doing that. I mean, it's just that's why they got these guys. And if you look at their at-bats, you're going to see 2 at-bats from Kike most of the time, more often than 4. So the pricing might look good, but remember, you're paying for 2 at-bats most likely. What they're doing, their lineup resembles a little bit like Tampa's did a couple years ago and last year, in all fairness, actually. Just because they have four or 5 staples, and then everybody else is sort of expendable. So just keep that in mind. But I still like them very much. I just am curious who's playing, and I'm also curious why Vegas hasn't released a run line yet. So we'll revisit that one. But
why don't you go over your summary, and as you do that, I'm going to run a Saberson build and see what we get.
So I like Atlanta, Texas, and the Dodgers the best. I just would like to know what I'm getting from the Dodger lineup. If JD Martinez is in the lineup, I'll give it a boost up, even though it's going to make them more expensive. I do think today I have a little more interest in the San Diego, Colorado pieces. The problem is you're going to have some weather issues, but like Sheet says, they kind of always get through those. I don't want to play the full stack of San Diego, but I am definitely open to playing a full stack of Colorado. I like Pittsburgh and Colorado as my favorite value pieces. And then I have the Mets as sort of a, hey, if I run out of stacks and I play enough lineups, that's who I would go to next. The spend ups, my favorites would be Strider and Gallen. And then I'm going to probably, some of these guys are going to be chalky, some won't be, but Lynn, Heaney, Quintana, Oviedo, Gray, Manning, all those guys are going to probably make some appearances in my lineups because I want to be overweight these expensive teams that people aren't playing today, like Atlanta, Texas, and the Dodgers. So my strategy is going to be mixing a lot of those 6K guys. And my favorites as of right now would be Heaney and probably Heaney and Oviedo. But I think that all of them are viable, and I'm probably gonna take some shots with a bunch of different versions of that.
Yeah. So when the Saber Sim build right off the bat, it looks as though team stacks, you're getting the Mets as the top owned stack, followed by Milwaukee, San Diego, and Baltimore. And as far as the pitchers, Strider at 50%, then Lance Lynn, the guys that we mentioned, Strider, Lynn, Oviedo, and Haney. So so Saber Sim is eating some of the chalk at pitching. But maybe you're right. Maybe Oviedo's not as chalky as I think he's going to be. We only have him at like 11% ownership projected.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he won't be that popular. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I just wouldn't worry on a slate like this, to be honest with you, about a guy who's 6,200 and anywhere around 11% owned or 15.
I didn't know G-Man Choi was on Pittsburgh. That's
he's back. You
learn something new every. You learn something new every day.
and by the way, he may not be by the end of the day. We don't know.
You never know.
Yeah, it is.
Just one other thing. It looks as though also the majority, and I built 150 in this build here, so the majority of the 5-mans are coming from the Mets as well. And just I guess, let me just see something. I imagine that you're gonna get like who's like the top one. Yeah, Alvarez, but it's pretty spread out. Like Alvarez, McNeil, Lindor, Beatty, I guess is cheap at 2,500. That's making a lot of this go. Boy, Alvarez at 4,200. That's a little saucy, isn't it?
Jordan.
A lot. No, Francisco Alvarez at catcher.
Oh, how much is he?
He's 4,200. That's not that.
He's been pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we'll.
Yeah, just an overall slate thing that I'm just looking at. Just looking at Goldie's ownership, sort of the industry aggregate. There's just no hitters. Even San Diego. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think I would stack San Diego. But like I'm looking at the ownership, and if this is going to be anywhere close to what we expect. I just wouldn't care at all about ownership today.
Just play your favorites and that's it.
What's that?
Just play your favorites and that's it.
I think I really think that like outside of maybe a full 5-man San Diego, and even that I don't think is like bad. You know what I mean? Like I just think that
well, you play the full San Diego with the Josiah Gray, and you're in business.
Yeah. But the problem is you still need him to outscore by enough points. But like but maybe you do. Maybe
you need Josiah Gray to outscore like Haney, and unless you play both of them, you do that.
Yeah, that's true.
What are the chances, honestly, if you play Josiah Gray and Heaney, that neither of them blow up? Like one of them is going to blow up. No.
I mean, Josiah Gray hasn't like been blowing up. He just gives up a couple home runs here and there. But I guess he has some blow up path. Yeah, that's true. Fair enough.
When is Eric Johnson in here with the Oakland Reco or no?
No, but I actually think Oakland players are going to have some ownership just because, like, if Jordan Diaz is in the lineup tonight, he's 2,600. They've got some really cheap pieces that people will probably use as some fillers.
It's going to be some pretty heavy duty leverage though if Lynn is as popular as we think he's going to be.
Well, no, but there's just no. See, again, I think we're just way overthinking it. like getting 5% of sub 5% on things is just it's really not going to matter that much. Because then you're also going to have different builds than those. You're going to end up.
I just have this feeling that while the hitting, like you said, maybe the ownership doesn't concentrate. So the way pitching seems to work is they always just like get on these guys, and I just have this. I have this weird feeling that between Haney and Lynn, they'll each be like 30%.
I think Lynn will be popular. I think maybe not quite that high, but I think they'll have some ownership, which is just a great argument of playing one of those guys with. Yeah. Then you do play the Oviedo and or Manning or Gray or Mikolas or Quintana. I mean, all of those guys are viable enough at their prices. It's not fun, but it's like
Right.
You know. Anyway, good luck to everybody. I'm gonna have to record a thing for our better takes pretty soon, and hopefully we can get after it tonight. Just did want to point out that thing though. As of right now, I would check ownership as you know gets closer, but I'm not seeing an insane amount of chalk. So
okay.
Anyway, good luck everybody.